Aye.
Show that passing 3-0. Thank you. Now we'll move on to issue number 4, teacher credential fees, commission operations. And I'd ask Kimberly Leahy, Mary Sandy, and Jamil Nakri to come forward. And any other support staff on the sides if you have additional folks here. And we'll begin with the Department of Finance.
Good afternoon, Kimberly Leahy, Department of Finance. The May revision proposes trailer bill language, we're talking about the credential fee first.
Yes, we are.
The May revision proposes amending statute to allow for an increase in the teacher credential fee to a maximum of $100 for initial and renewal credentials valid for 5 years to provide the Commission with additional resources to support operations and mission-critical activities. The Commission contracts with the Attorney General's Office to represent it in teacher misconduct hearings before the Office of Administrative Hearings. The current caseload at the Attorney General's Office is about 250 cases, with about 180 new cases annually. The Commission's current resources are insufficient to support both the backlog and the ongoing casework. Therefore, the May revision also proposes to augment the Commission's expenditure authority by $4.5 million. Specifically, $3.9 million is to address the growing backlog of teacher misconduct cases at the Attorney General's Office, and $600,000 is to support the operations at the Commission. A $30 fee increase and a $4.5 million increase to the Commission's expenditure authority appears to be proportionate to the Commission's need, given that the average cost to close a case appears to be between $20,000 and $70,000, and that district-reported cases cost more than that to process than those received by other means. Thank you. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Move now to the Commission.
Thank you. Mary Sandy with the Commission on Teacher Credentialing. Over the last several years, we have more than doubled the number of cases that we are processing each year. We are receiving around 5,500 cases per year to process, and having doubled the number of cases, we're seeing a significant increase in the number that are moving to the Attorney General for final disposition. We haven't heard yet from the lodge analyst, but I'd like to just simply say that while I respect their analysis, the proposal that they are offering for a lower fee increase will simply not be sufficient to address the backlog that has grown at the Attorney General's Office, or to address the increased number of cases that we're processing and sending over to them annually. We support the Governor's proposal and the May revise. We're happy to answer any questions. I've brought General Counsel, who manages that division, in case you have any technical questions for surrounding that work. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we'll move to the LAO.
Jamil Nakvi, LAO. So we agree with the administration and the Commission that there's an issue with this backlog at the Office of the Attorney General, and we think this warrants additional resources for the Commission to address both the current backlog of cases at the Attorney General, as well as the ongoing increase in cases that are referred to the Attorney General each year. We do recommend only providing an increase to the credential fee and to the Commission's expenditure authority just to cover that particular issue. We haven't received justification for the other $600,000 that was mentioned that would go to the other divisions in the Commission, only the portion that would go to cover this backlog of teacher credential discipline cases. So in consideration of that, we would only recommend approving an amount sufficient to cover that backlog and the ongoing workload. Further, we think that we've taken a series of actions in recent years to address the Commission's expenditures and budget, and to bring it more in line with their resources, and to grant them additional authority and revenue-raising capabilities. And we believe at the current time, their current reserve is adequate. It's about 17% estimated at the end of this year across all funds. In statute, we mandate a kind of a reserve of 10% for the Commission, so we believe their current reserve levels are adequate. As kind of alluded to in the Commission's earlier remarks, we do believe, based on our review of the numbers and the caseload, that the administration's and CTC's estimate of the revenue needed to cover both, again, this backlog and the ongoing workload associated with these teacher discipline cases at the Office of the Attorney General is on the high side, and we don't think that they need quite that much revenue to cover that ongoing caseload and the backlog. We estimate, in contrast, that they would need about $3 million in additional resources, as opposed to the $4.5 million that they're proposing, and we've estimated that the credential fee increase would be about $15 to cover that, as opposed to the $30 that they're proposing, and then so we would recommend kind of raising the cap to $85 from the current $70. That being said, there is a statutory responsibility and obligation on the administration and on the legislature to look at the credential fee every year and ensure that that is adequate to cover the commission's needs and to ensure an adequate reserve level. So we would certainly recommend revisiting that in subsequent years to ensure that it's adequate to cover the CTC's needs and in particular this issue with the teacher credential discipline cases moving forward.
Thank you. Dr. Sandy, what is the Commission's response?
Well, so we estimate that there will be, by the end of this year, the current year that we're in, 250 cases awaiting disposition at the Attorney General. For every 10 cases we send over, they close about one case. So that's a number that's growing, and they can only close and work on as many cases as we can afford to pay for. We budgeted this year $1.3 million for our Attorney General costs, and we expect to end the year paying about $1.9 to $2 million just for the current year's workload, and that doesn't dig into the backlog that's growing over there. We estimate that the average that it cost per case is around $21,000, but as Ms. Leahy pointed out, the range is from $18,000 to $70,000 per case, depending on the specifics of the case. The only way we're going to bring that backlog of 250 cases down is if we go after those cases aggressively. The individuals who stand behind those cases, who are those cases, are either folks who did wrong things and who need to have their credential acted upon with all due haste to protect the public safety, or they're individuals who've been wrongly accused and need to be given their due process as quickly as possible. So the answer to this problem is to fund it in a manner that's adequate to aggressively bring those numbers down. We believe that's both a public safety issue and a due process issue that is of great interest. So where we set the funding level will determine how much of that we can take care of each year between now and the next 5 to 7 years.
Thank you. Any questions? Ms. Senator Allen, then Senator Morlock.
Okay, I just want to get a sense of this, because effectively you're asking us to double the fee in a matter of 3 years. I mean, we were only at $55 back in 2012, and now you're talking about going up to $100. And, I'm just particularly sensitive of the fact that you've got a lot of younger teachers or people who aren't even on salary yet. I'd love to hear what work, if at all, if anything, is kind of underway to try to give waivers to people who may be particularly low wealth, who we don't want to discourage from getting into the profession. I understand it's only $30, maybe ultimately, I guess but this is the thing. These things always are only just $20, and then they keep shooting up and shooting up. And as I say, we're doubling in 3 years. So I'd love to hear about that. I can't help but notice that the justification for the last increase was that there was a drop in credentials. Now we have an increase in credentials, and that's being used as a justification for the increase. I understand that it's more about the Attorney General issues. I'd love to hear a little bit more about how that works. But it does seem, I don't know, I'm thinking about all the money in Prop 98 and the fact that this is a necessary function with regards to running of our school system. And yet we're asking, a 23-year-old teacher, potential teacher deep in debt to cover the costs of discipline procedures for teachers at the other end of their career. I'm just having a little trouble with some of the equity of that.
So let me start with that. I'll probably turn it over to General Counsel Rufo on the issues around discipline. But we have seen in the last 10 years a 74% decline in the number of people enrolled in teacher education.
Over the last how many years?
10 years, 74% decline, from 77,000 teachers enrolled in teacher education down to 19,000 enrolled in teacher education. So each one of those enrollees is a potential fee. There was a point in our history, and I wasn't here at the time, I've only been the executive director for just over 3 years, but say 7 or 8 years ago, we hit a high point in terms of enrollments and revenues that led the legislature and the administration to reduce the fee to $55 to bring it into better alignment so that the resources coming in covered our expenses and we weren't growing our reserve. But we have since then eaten away those reserves. We have lost 17 positions 3 years ago in our budget. It has been a steady decline in the resources we had available to run our operation. So that's just, those are just some simple numbers.
But your reserves are at 17%, right?
Well, our reserves actually are, we have a reserve in our testing account of about 55%. And our testing account that's the account that all the fees for individuals take the CBEST and the CSET, the various tests for licensure, that goes into that account for us. So that has that's a much smaller account that represents about 24% of our budget, and it has a reserve of 56%. Our credentials, our teaching credential fund had a reserve at the end of 12-13 of 2.1%, and it's projected to go up to 8%, but that is the bulk of our resource base to run the operations of the agency. I'm sorry.
Excuse me, I'd just like to point out that while we're talking percentages for reserve, it might provide some relevance to talk about the actual dollar amounts. I think that on the Teacher Credentials Fund, the reserve currently is at, I think, $1 million, roughly. And on the test development account is a little over $2 million, but the governor's budget proposal will use $600,000 of that to align the certain science teacher tests with the next generation science standards. So these reserves will be going down without additional resources.
So with regard to the idea of a waiver, there is in fact, for every first-time credential applicant.
And so the point is that those two reserves are included in the 17% that was mentioned by the
correct.
LEO. So, okay.
That's correct.
All right.
So I just want to, if you're ready, I just want to
Yeah.
speak to the issue of a waiver. So first-time credential applicants already have the opportunity to pay half the credential fee. I think taking into account first-time credential applicants. So people who are completing programs with college debt, with their other fees associated with, they're paying 50% of the fee.
When you say they have the opportunity, that means
Excuse me, I meant to say that the statute allows them, and we only charge them half the fee for a credential for a first-time applicant. Once they're employed, and every 5 years subsequent to that, they pay the full fee every 5 years. So it's a $100 fee every 5 years. It's $20 per year,
Right.
which is not a large professional fee compared to the other licensed professions in California, and it's not above the average nationally either. It's right, if we move to $100, we'll be right in the middle of what other states are charging for credential fees to cover their operations. So first-timers already receive, it's not a waiver, it's simply they're charged half the fee. With respect to other waivers for low income, that's a policy consideration. The legislature could certainly take that up. I would simply say that processing waiver applications has time and staff implications that will increase our costs for processing credentials, and that would have to be taken into account. Definitions of what constitutes low income or other provisions that would support a waiver, that's really very much a policy determination that the legislature could take up.
Okay. No, thank you for that, and I appreciate learning about this initiate fee that is half the cost. I think that's substantial to me.
Senator Morlock.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dr. Sandy, I'm just curious. You're saying your discipline workload is increasing. So what we don't have any information other than it's discipline. But what are the nature of these cases?
I'm gonna, if you don't mind, I'll turn that over to General Counsel Nanette Rufo.
I'm Nanette Rufo. I'm the General Counsel for the Commission on Teacher Credentialing, and I also run the Division of Professional Practices, which is the Commission's division that does discipline. The kinds of cases we see at the Attorney General's office tend to be the most serious, very serious cases. About half of them involve allegations of misconduct against children. Following a probable cause hearing that's held at the Commission, prior to a case going to the Attorney General. About half of these cases, the Committee of Credentials has recommended revocation of the credentials. So for the most part, these are very serious allegations, and they're serious for the educator whose reputation is under a cloud while these allegations are pending. If the case can't be proved by clear and convincing evidence, that educator deserves to have their name cleared. Waiting for years is not an appropriate due process for them. On the other hand, if they have engaged in serious misconduct, the public, and for the safety of the children in the classrooms, deserves to have that educator removed as soon as possible. So we see this as an area where the delay does disservice to both sides of this action. We either need to get people's names cleared or we need to get them removed from the classroom.
Okay, I'm aware of that. So what kind of trends are you seeing? You're seeing an increased workload of this nature then?
The workload we're seeing, several years ago, the Commission had a well-publicized backlog within the Commission. The Commission has worked very hard and brought in a new leadership team, including Dr. Sandy and me, to help deal with that. And we've cleared out our backlog internally completely. What we're seeing now, though, is a big increase in the number of cases we receive from reports from superintendents of school districts. The district superintendent is required to report to us when a teacher essentially leaves employment or is suspended for more than 10 days following an allegation of misconduct. 5 years ago, we got 200 to 250 cases a year through these reports. Now they're in the 700 to 750 reports a year range. By their nature, as you'd guess, these are all cases that involve children. Typically, it involves multiple witnesses, multiple incidents over time, and so they're really complex cases as well. So this type of, because we now process more cases, we don't let them pile up anywhere at the Commission. Our workload has doubled the workload. By doubling the number of cases we move every year, it's doubled the number going to the Attorney General's office. So the same number are coming in our door roughly, but we're getting them out expeditiously. And now we need to complete that progress by continuing to move them expeditiously while the Attorney General represents us.
Okay, so you're doing a good job internally, but what are you doing then to communicate to your school districts? Or what are we doing to say, hey, knock this off, what's going on?
Well, the school districts are reporting their local actions, and so we're the recipient of those reports, and we want to make sure we get as many reports as possible. So we send out annually personal letters to every superintendent by, hard copy email, by hard copy letters, old-fashioned postal letters. We send out emails. We send out coded correspondence electronically because we think this is a really important duty. And we want the superintendents to know about it, and I think for the most part, they are at this point quite well aware and have been cooperative about filing those initial reports.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chair, I get narratives, but I don't get hard numbers, so you're giving us lots of data here, but would an addendum to the materials, would that be helpful, or is that easy to do to let us know, like your budget or your reserves or some of these questions?
Through your consultant, you can request, when you first get.
Yeah, but not when I get the materials this morning. It's kind of hard to, start running everybody the hour before the meeting, so
You'll find that in the budget process here, when we hit the May revision, everything is immediate, and that's not the best way to do business maybe, but we have a very limited amount of time to get these things done. So you're right, in these hearings, today, tomorrow, and then on Friday, the full budget, there will be relatively short notice. So as soon as your consultant gets the materials and shares them with you, or you get the materials directly, it's a matter of getting on the phone, having your staff get on the phone, and getting everything you need, because I can tell you the majority staff is overwhelmed just putting together the agenda and getting the witnesses and everything else. So understanding your concern, and it's a very real concern, I'm not sure how else to respond given our time limits. Okay.
that helps.
Always glad to help. But certainly, if you're requesting after the fact information, they can provide you with whatever you want. Just
Sure.
It's hard to get it before then.
We're proud of our work. We're happy to tell you all about it.
Especially I had, 72 hours in a day.
With that, the chair is going to recommend that we go with the staff recommendation on this. The safety of the children, we all agree, is tantamount to what we're doing in our schools, and I think these dollars are necessary. And while the LAO, I always appreciate their very accurate work in terms of funding and what needs are, this is an area where I would err on the side of being a little bit overly generous, even, and it's only a $15 difference per application. With that, before we move to a vote, if there's any public comment on this item, I'd ask any members of the public who wish to comment to please come forward. And I'll excuse you all for now because we have to have space for members of the public to speak. And when you come forward, please state your name, any organization you might represent, if any, and you have up to a minute to address this.
Good afternoon, Sarah Lillis with Ed Voice, and I just wanted to thank the chair for his comments because we agree that this is a critically important role for the CTC, and we are very supportive of the staff's recommendation and the governor's proposal on this piece. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lillis. Okay, seeing no other public comment, I'd ask the Secretary to read the motion and open the roll.
The motion is to approve the request to increase teacher credential fees to $100 and provide an increase of expenditure authority of $4.5 million from the Teacher Credentials Fund. Also adopt implementing trailer bill language as proposed to be refined as necessary. Senator Blah?
Aye? Wait a second.
Can we bifurcate this one? I'm not opposed to raising the fee, but didn't I just vote against adding funds to this 4.5? Is that the same as the 5 million in the last vote? No. So where's this 4.5 coming from?
Is this from the increase in fees? This is from the increase. Yeah, so they're the same thing. It's just.
Okay, thank
the
you.
increase
Thank
in
you. I
fees.
just wanted, thank you. It's going so fast.
I know.
It's a lot of money.
It's like the NFL.
Like the NFL. All that start and stop, I think is.
Go again. Read it again, please.
So the motion is to approve the request to increase teacher credential fees to $100 and provide an increase of expenditure authority of $4.5 million from the Teacher Credential Fund. Adopt implementing trailer bill language as proposed to be refined as necessary. Senator Blah?
Aye.
Senator Allen?
Aye.
Senator Morlaw?
Okay, show that item passing 3-0. Now we move to the last item on agenda, Part A, which is educator misconduct. I'd like to invite the same folks back. And we'll begin with the Department of Finance.
Kimberly Leahy again with the Department of Finance. The May revision proposes two pieces of trailer bill language. The first piece would elevate from regulations to statute details of the information to be provided by districts in district reports to the Commission of Teacher Credentialing on teacher misconduct in an effort to emphasize what should be included in a report. The second piece would provide the Commission the jurisdiction to pursue a superintendent or charter school administrator who fails to report the teacher misconduct. The Commission reviews district reports to determine to a level of probable cause if misconduct has occurred and may propose an adverse action such as suspension or even revocation of the credential. When the Commission makes a recommendation for an adverse action against a credential holder, the teacher may appeal the decision before the Office of Administrative Hearings. Because the Commission contracts with the Office of the Attorney General to represent the Commission before the Office of Administrative Hearings, additional time to develop these district-reported cases equates to additional costs for the Commission. Both of these proposed changes are intended to improve the quality of district reports and ultimately reduce the Commission's Attorney General costs. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving now to Commission.
Thank you. Just every effort that we can possibly undertake to streamline this process and to make it more manageable will make it less costly and make it more time efficient. We fully support these proposals and urge you to pass them along. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. And the LAO?
Yeah, we have no issues with the administration's proposal. Again, to the extent that this reduces workload for the commission and the attorney general to have to conduct additional investigation to discover information that was left out of required reports, this could reduce the cost and workload of investigating these cases. So for that reason, we'd be supportive. Again, noting what the administration has already noted, that failure to report some of this information already is unprofessional conduct in statute. That being said, we don't see any harm in explicitly giving the commission the jurisdiction to investigate these administrators who don't make these reports.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from colleagues? Senator Morlock?
Dr. Sandy, these reports, are they available to the public?
General Counsel.
No, those are confidential reports. All investigative work of the commission is confidential by statute.
So then, could you just tell me why it's really a big deal to improve the quality and depth of information?
We do get the reports from superintendents throughout the state, but the information they include varies wildly. So sometimes we receive a report alleging that there have been engaged in misconduct with numerous students, and the students aren't identified. And so the districts will request the information. They refuse to provide it, citing a variety of different privacy statutes. And so it makes it we're then spending time trying to get something as simple as the names of the witnesses, because it's very difficult to investigate if you can't contact anybody.
Well then, since you've answered the question, another quick question is, when you've concluded your investigation, do you inform the parents, the public, so-and-so exonerated, or so-and-so found guilty and terminated, or?
Well, it depends on the circumstances. If there's an adverse action is taken, if there's reproved, their credentials are suspended or revoked, that's a public action. And so we do inform anyone who might be, who has filed a complaint with the commission. And it's also available on our public lookup on the website. So if you want to look up an educator, you can find any record of discipline. So it's fairly highly publicized. But during the time a case is under the investigation, that entire process is confidential.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Morlock. Senator Allen, did you have a question?
I know all about this issue. I was on the school board, and
In that case, we'll move now to a reading of the motion and, well, actually, time for public comment first. Any members of the public, and while thank and excuse this panel, members of the public who wish to speak on this issue, please come forward.
Otto Mack, whoa, that's kind of loud. Otto Mack with the Association of California School Administrators. While we're certainly supportive of the commission having the resources to expedite any reports, we do raise some concerns regarding what the language will look like around their role in providing superintendents or district leadership any type of monetary fine and what that looks like. We've heard about the proposal. This is a proposal that's come up in the past, and we've always raised concerns about what that looks like and what CTC's jurisdiction regarding this is. And so we're certainly looking forward to see what the language actually looks like to make sure that it's consistent with the direction that we can support. Thank you.
Thank you.
so
Next speaker.
Mr. Chair, just quickly, when the folks say what the language looks like, they're sort of, there is language in the may revise. So what exactly do you mean by that?
There's actually a summary in the May revision. There's not actually definitive. Oh, okay. Then when we review the language and have an opportunity to review the language, we will raise specific concerns about what that language looks like, because we actually haven't had an opportunity to look at that language so far.
So, Mr. Chair, do we then have the opportunity?
While they're doing that, I just want to say thanks for making me feel a little better.
That's why we're here, Senator Moore.
Mr. Allen?
So I guess my question is kind of a process one. I mean, given the fact that key stakeholders may not have had opportunity to review languages, do we typically, what would be, what's the, is there going to be an opportunity for them to then weigh in later in a meaningful way that we could act upon potentially, or is?
You talking about senators or?
This isn't, excuse me, let's do this through the chair, please.
Yeah.
The actions we take today are not final actions on any of these. These are actions of the subcommittee. They will then go to the full budget committee, and the AXA or any other organization has an opportunity between now and Friday certainly to work with us. Again, the timeline being so short between the time we actually get the May revise, have a week basically to do hearings and then go to final budget, precludes some of the normal activity. But they will have an opportunity to talk with us. And then we'll be voting on trailer bills, not just in the budget committee, but then once budget on the Senate side, works with budget on the Assembly side in conference committee, there will be further revisions and improvements theoretically to the language. Then when the two leaders meet with the governor, there will be further negotiation on this. And finally, on or about June 15th, when the whole package comes to us on the Senate floor, we'll be taking a final budget vote. So this is really very much a work in progress, but this is only really the first step, if that is responsive. Okay. Next speaker.
Sarah Lillis with Ed Voice, and similarly, we would just ask that any refinements to the language, as we've been involved in recent legislative action on this issue, that we be involved in those, or participate in those refinements. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any further questions or comments? Seeing none, I will now ask staff to read the recommendation.
Recommendation is to adopt the governor's proposed trailer bill language to be refined as necessary.
And call the roll, please.
Senator Block?
Aye.
Senator Allen?
Aye.
Senator Morlock?
Okay, show this passing 3-0. And that finishes Agenda Part A. And anyone who's just here for Agenda Part A, feel free to go.